CLE, how are we? Welcome back to the Cleveland Pulse podcast. This is episode 41. Jeff here, along with the other usual host, Justin. We have two special guests today for episode 41. Before we're getting into our topic and introducing our guests, me and Justin just want to give a huge shout out and thanks to everybody who watched our last episode, almost 200 views on YouTube. And almost 1,700 plus views on YouTube altogether. So we just want to give a huge shout out for that right away. Our two guests today, who we're going to be talking about why the Cavaliers are so bad, are our good buddies Mike and Bennett, longtime pals and people that we've known all the way back since our days at St. Over High School, and just two other guys that are, they're born and raised Cleveland sports fans. So it's going to be a great discussion today. We're really excited to get into it. We got a couple concrete topics, and then if we're off on tangents, we're off on tangents. I'm gonna throw it over to Justin first. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm chilling. It's good to have other point of views in here again. The last time we did it, we had it with John Perilla, another one of our high school buddies for the Browns, and now we got Ben and Mike, which great guys. Love those guys to death. Ben's got his thing going with the Call of Duty stuff, and Mike's back at OSU. I miss it. Wish I could be there with him and everything.
Baby.
Yeah, I miss it. So, but I'm glad to have them here. Ben, how you doing? You got a nice little setup going.
Yeah, I'm actually doing really good. Thank you for asking. I've just been kind of chilling. I just got upgraded my PC because my old one really couldn't handle the kind of editing that I wanted to get into for not only like Call of Duty, but I used to, when we were in high school, I would do like Cavs videos or just hype stuff like that. So just being able to have a setup where I can have a dual monitor setup and run or Premiere on one screen and then have the ability to just kind of mess around and go through my clips on the other is going to be, just a huge time saver for me.
I feel that. Mike, how's it feeling being back at OSU with everything that's going on in the world?
It's a little weird. I only have one in-person class, and it's hybrid. So, like, it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. I'm only on campus one day a week. So it's a little weird from that aspect. And obviously everything being online. But, the other stuff that's going on down here, different, like, little events they're still putting on. It's just fun to be down here.
Yeah, at least we got a OSU basketball that's doing pretty well. Exactly. So at least we got that going for us. But yeah, Jeff's the one who really set this one up. I'm really happy that, he's been making a considered effort and trying to branch out our whole podcast and everything. And so he's the one who came up with the ideas for today, and I'll kick it back over to him.
Right. So the last time we talked about the Cavs, which was not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, they were 6th seed, 7th seed in the East, which, take that with a grain of salt, I guess, because the East is very weak sauce. But now, after a 10-game losing streak, they're the second worst record in the conference. So I feel like this is just something that happens with the Cavs at least every year that LeBron has around the team. We go on some terrible losing streak. 10 is actually not too bad compared to some years in the past. So I'm pretty sure we have 23-game losing streak, tied for the most ever. I digress. And now we're actually on a 2-game winning streak, which is pretty laughable because we shouldn't have won the first game, but whatever. I want to throw it over to Mike first for our first topic. What is the biggest problem with this current Cavs roster? You could keep it concise. You could freak out. You could tell us how you're feeling. What's the biggest problem with how this Cavs team is structured?
Well, one thing that I thought of was obviously easy cop-out answer that they could be using too, but the injuries that they're going through. I mean, we got 3 out of our top 4 players on our payroll that are out or injured. Kevin Love, who's seemingly, dead. I don't even remember what injury he has, but he's been for
this year.
Has he even played? I don't even think he's played a game this season. But
nope.
As much as you want to dog him, I mean, he's still going to be a part of our offense and a part of our team that we're missing right now. Andre Drummond's sitting out now because we're trying to trade him. I'll get to that later again. But and then Larry Nance, who's also been injured. The third player on our payroll is Taurean Prince right now after that trade. But yeah, 3 out of our top 4 players on our payroll out injured. That's going to be tough to overcome no matter who you are.
Yeah, and I think just coming off of that.
Right.
Sorry, Jeff, you cut off for a second.
Go ahead. No.
No, just to go
Go
along
ahead,
with that.
Justin. You're good.
To go along with that, I mean, to talk about just the injuries, it feels like, at some point Colin was out for a little bit and then Garland was out, and now we're just sitting Drummond trying to trade him. It's kind of just like been a storm of just the worst kind of like Cavs management that we've seen in a while. Obviously, I can't really put that on Bickerstaff, but it just seems like an overall top to bottom kind of mess right now.
Right. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we have two quality wins against Brooklyn. If you could have quality wins in the NBA regular season, Bennett, I'm gonna come to you based off of what Mike has said. I know you watch a lot of basketball. You just watch it for fun. You just watch it like as film sessions for you almost. Someone who loves the game. Does Kevin Love not playing? Does Andre Drummond not playing? And does Larry Nance not playing? Do those three guys? How much of an impact do they make being off the court, in your opinion?
That is, I mean, the injuries, Mike, that was a great point. I mean, Andre Drummond is like a walking double-double. I mean, on any given night, the guy can go for 20-20 or 20-15 on a casual night. Kevin Love throughout his career, walking double-double again. I mean, probably won't be scoring 20 points a game in his career again. Obviously, if he gets traded to a team where he's relegated to a third or fourth option. On this team, he probably could. So again, there's a huge chunk of offense being missed. But, the way that those guys play doesn't really fit the style of the play that Bickerstaff really wants and Sexton really want to play, which is get the rebound and go and push it and beat the teams down the floor. If you watch Sexton, not most of his points, but a lot of his points come off of a rebound off of like either Drummond or, Allen out there who kick it to him, and he'll speed up the floor because he is really quick. He's very fast. And he'll try to get to the basket. So with those guys not being out there, I think that's kind of the reason why they've been trying to hold out. Because I mean, Kevin Love's been hurt with a calf injury for all of the season. And like, I know calf injury is the precursor to an Achilles tear. So you always want to be careful with that. But I mean, he really hasn't played in like 2 or 3 years. Like he's just kind of been eating up payroll sitting on the sideline. So I think that they've almost been, with the purposely sitting Drummond in order to kind of just keep him safe for either a trade or a buyout situation. It's also kind of helped the team in a sense, basically be like, okay, we're going to play the way that we want to play rather than adjust to throwing it down to Andre Drummond and having him back down some defender 5, 6, 7 possessions out of the second quarter. It kind of gets them more of the flow that they want to play. But on the flip side, they're playing people who aren't as good as Kevin Love. Obviously, Larry Nance is hurt, and then Andre Drummond. You're playing lesser talent. Jared Allen's a different story, but we're talking about the bench D-leaguers that wouldn't be in there. So that's probably the biggest problem right now is the roster and, of course, the injuries.
Yeah, right. I think sitting Drummond, which, we'll get to, but Jared Allen's been a pleasant surprise. I think he just fits in really, really good with us. But just the overall makeup of the team, even with those guys healthy, I mean, I guess Larry Nance seemingly was a big piece of our team before he got hurt because it just seemed like we played better ball with him. But it's like we have fast, athletic guards, and then we just have like big, like stocky. Yeah, we just have slow big men like Andre Drummond, like not really an athlete. He's got a decent post package. I mean, the most athletic thing I've seen Kevin Love do in his career was guard Steph Curry in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals. Besides that, it's just corner wing threes, basically. So, I mean, I don't know. Do we have any other thoughts about the makeup of the team?
The only thing with that, I mean, Bennett mentioned it as well with the pace of play that our point guards try and play at sometimes. Kevin Love, he's historically been a very good outlet passer, especially off a defensive rebound, those over the head full court passes. I don't know how often that's going to be happening for us with him out there, but that's just another component we're missing. And Larry Nance, I mean, like you said, this season, he's been a big part for us, and he's extended his range. He's been knocking down threes consistently. I remember seeing him in one of the games this season. It was one of the first ones I watched. He went like 4 for 4 from 3. It was like 8 of 8 from the field, just playing really well. And he's actually like making defenders be honest to him further out on the arc, which is, a big step for him and for our team, which really helps. So that's definitely something we're missing.
I think just to kick in really quickly before we move on, I think my one problem with the team is the lack of like consistency with the 3-point shot. I think the only guy as of right now shooting the 3 ball really well is Dylan Windler. I don't know if it's a bad thing that he comes off the bench for that role. I feel like at this point, you should almost start him over Okoro to kind of just get those games started with him in a way that, I don't know. I feel like Okoro might be for a later subject, but I just haven't loved that pick since it happened. I feel like we're missing the small forward, the typical small forward who goes out there and just gives you a ton of buckets. And, when you have the starting lineup of Colin Sexton, Garland, and Okoro, you're kind of just sitting there like, all right, who's going to shoot the three ball and who's going to like actually have it go in? Because the past couple nights, it's been pretty atrocious between Sexton and Garland for percentage wise. But that's just my kind of beef with the roster right now. Is no sure thing at the 3-point line.
Right. I think that's, a good start. I'm not really sure if there's anything to do to fix those problems, immediately. But that's for a later date, I guess. So topic 2, getting into, we're going to be talking about Kobe Altman. There's a lot of stuff in an organization. We all know this. It's your players, your coach, your GM, it's everything. I want to start with Justin here. Rate Kobe Altman on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being bad, 10 being good.
So I feel like I'm gonna be on the I feel like everyone's gonna have like a below 5 score for him, and I'm right there with everyone. I'm gonna give him a 4. Honestly, the best move that he's made in recent memory as of right now, it would have been the Drummond move for me until everything started falling apart. Now it's the Jared Allen move, and that's the only good move that I can really attest to him. We can get into the whole draft thing with Colin Sexton and Garland and Okoro. I mean, 5th overall picks in the first round. It's hard to assess them right now because they're in their 3rd, 2nd, and 1st years and everything. They're young guys, but every other move that he's made has just been awful. The Kevin Love extension is pretty ridiculous. I think it's the most ridiculous thing considering I feel like that happened 4 years ago. I wonder how many games Kevin Love has actually played within those 4 years. I feel like you can maybe pull it for a full season's worth out of those 4 years. So for me, it's a 4. I'm hoping that Sexton, Garland, Okoro, and Allen are, the future, and they all turn out to be studs at some point. But besides that, just hasn't done anything really good. And the managing of the Drummond situation right now is probably the one thing that's upsetting me the most.
Right. I totally agree. So 4. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. Bennett, thoughts?
Well, I have always had beef with Kobe Altman since the very second this guy took office. I personally do not think we should have gotten rid of David Griffin. We haggled over a couple $1 million, I think, max, and we didn't pay him because Dan Gilbert didn't want to pay a GM that kind of money. When you look back, and David Griffin, from the second he took office, changed the entire caliber of the entire roster, starting from before LeBron even came back. The year prior, he was making moves at the deadline that were very good, leading up into LeBron actually coming back. And then he turned Dion Waiters into J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert. And, even though looking back at it now, like JR was a crucial part and so was Shumpert. They didn't really work out the last 2 years. They were both here in Cleveland. But at the time, that was a really, really good move that we needed to make. So from the second we got rid of David Griffin, I already knew it was chalked, especially when you have the stories coming out that LeBron was on a phone call with Kobe Altman and Dan Gilbert, and he said, do not trade Kyrie, bring him to camp. I want to talk to him. I will try and work this out, but we're not trading Kyrie. Do not do that. And 10 minutes later, he traded him for Isaiah Thomas. And I think that was kind of when LeBron decided, okay, I'm done with this management. I'm done with this team. So for this current year and his entire reign as Cavs GM, I'm going to have to give him a 2 just because he started off on the wrong foot. I will say he has had some good moves. I'm not a huge Colin Sexton fan, but Colin Sexton is a pretty good NBA player. Later in the podcast, I'll get into my critiques about him and what I think of him specifically. But I do think, that was probably his one very good draft pick. I was coming around on Kobe Altman when he made the trade for Kevin Porter Jr. We didn't draft him, but we traded for him. I think Kevin Porter Jr., if he can get his head on straight, that guy is going to be he's going to be 28, 29 a game, looking real good once he figures his stuff out. At a triple-double last night in the G League. He's been a man amongst boys down there. And of course, the Jared Allen deal that Justin mentioned, I don't even know how we got in on that. So that was definitely a plus. I think Jared Allen has potential to be a depoy at some point in the future of his career, as long as he stays healthy. He's long, athletic, needs to work on the offense a little bit. But other than that, I don't think we've really had great draft picks. Okoro's young, but it doesn't look like he's going to be a huge offensive threat. We've had some really horrible moves in terms of like the Kevin Love deal. Some of the other people that we've signed, I guess McGee was brought in for, just being a veteran presence, but I mean, we're going to look to trade him at the deadline as well. So I just not a huge Kobe Altman fan from the start. Going to have to give him a 2.
Wow. 4-2. Mike?
Well, Bennett stole it from me. I'm going to give him a 2 as well. Now, I'm kind of between Justin's reasons and Bennett's reasons, and some of my own as well. Justin touched on it. The 4-year, $120 million extension to Kevin Love on a guy who was injured every year, even when LeBron was on the team. It's just inexplicable, and it's an untradeable contract that we've just been burdened with because, I mean, Kevin Love, great guy, good player, but what role does he really have on this team? We've already touched on it. So, and we can't get rid of him because of that contract. No one's willing to pick up a contract that large for a player that's his age that's also injury prone. Secondly, this one's tough. John Beilein, 4-year, $20 million contract about
Beilein.
That didn't even get through his first season. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No. Didn't even make the All-Star break.
Didn't even make the All-Star break. He had when I heard rumors, obviously I'm a little biased being that team up north he's coming from, but there was no reason to think he was going to be a successful NBA coach. All credit to Brad Stevens for the Celtics. He's been a great coach over there, coming from Butler and everything. But historically, college coaches just aren't the move when you're trying to sign an NBA coach. And then we touched on it, the Drummond trade. Some people may think that was a good trade. I personally have my own view on it. I don't think that trade really made any sense at all for us at the time. Obviously, we knew that he had that huge option that he picked up this year, and we gave up a pick for him in addition to a couple other pieces that were meaningless to us. But we gave up a pick for him, which I think, when you're trying to rebuild, picks are obviously your necessity. But if we traded him because we planned on trading him, if we traded for him because we planned on trading him eventually, I don't see why we didn't start shopping him at the beginning of the season, because that would give teams more value being able to implement him at the beginning of the year instead of trading at the end of the year for him and having to implement what would be a key player on your roster in a playoff team in a shorter amount of time. So we have to at least recoup that. I think we should, obviously, but we have to at least recoup that second round pick we traded for him. And I just don't really see what value we got from having Andre Drummond here for a year and a half. Bennett touched on it as well. We haven't drafted all that well. Sexton, we'll get into it later. He's on the fence for me personally. I'm a little more towards falling off the fence. But Garland he's improved this year, but that's not saying much. Okoro, it's his first year, but like Bennett said, it's not looking great. The beginning of the season, he looked like he was going to be really good. He was scoring a significant amount. He was playing defense great. I think he even had a game winner at one point. But, since then, it's been really subpar. You will never hear his name called, at all. And then Bennett touched on it as well, the exception of KPJ, which would have been an absolute steal if we could have developed him at all in any way, shape, or form. But that's not all the blame on us. Obviously, there's off the court issues there, but I wish we could have done something more there to help him, because even Kevin Love touched on it in an interview on the Road Trippin' podcast with RJ and Channing. He said that KPJ was the most talented guy on the roster. And, coming from a vet like that, that's some high praise. Jared Allen, we touched on it, was the lone bright spot. I have no clue how we landed him for as little as we did and even got into that trade. But, I think he's a restricted free agent at the end of this season, so we're going to have to put some work in there. Kobe Altman, let's see if you can actually improve your rating at all, re-signing
Bump it up from a 2 to a 3.
Exactly. And then it was my bring it all home point, but Bennett mentioned it as well. We never should have even been at Kobe Altman in the first place. David Griffin was so good at his job. And what frustrates me is that Dan Gilbert has not has not extended a single GM in his tenure as the owner of the Cavs ever, a single time. And I definitely think it was worth it for a guy like David Griffin. He brought you the city's first championship. He built that team. Obviously, LeBron played a part as well. You gotta prove it on the court too, but that's what the pieces around them. And even something with David Griffin, before he left, there was rumors of that trade with Paul George that we were putting together, and it was next to a sure thing that it was like almost pretty much finalized. And then, Dan Gilbert gives him the boot out the door, see you later. And then Kobe Altman takes over and the whole thing falls apart. Whether that's his fault or not, I don't know. But again, we shouldn't have even been with Kobe Altman in the first place. So that's my long laundry list with Kobe Altman. There's very few bright spots, and there's many more dark spots that have been on his career as GM so far.
One more sorry, Mike. One more thing about Kobe Altman. The reason why Kevin Porter Jr. flipped off on a handle was because his locker was given to Taurean Prince. How do you I don't know if that's like staff, who that falls on, but as a GM, come on, you have somebody who's been here for a year and a half already and has how do you just give somebody his locker away? Obviously had a temper tantrum, threw some food, typical Clevelanders throwing food in the locker room. But it's how does that happen? Who does that fall on? I don't know if that's Kobe Altman or who, but it almost seems like it was like a jack, because Kevin Porter wasn't playing throughout the beginning of the season. It didn't seem like we had any intention of really incorporating him back into the lineup after the offseason scandal. I didn't think it was really anything, to be honest, that serious, especially for somebody of his talent level. I would give him multiple chances to mess up before I would throw him away for pretty much nothing like we did. But it seems like it was almost like a spite move to Kevin Porter Jr. that they gave his locker away, because that just doesn't happen by accident. You don't just take a nameplate off of somebody's locker and give it to some guy that just came in from a different team. That seems more of you've been sulking, we're going to trade you. And that you walk into the practice facility and you see that the stuff from your locker, your personal belongings and stuff has been taken out and moved to a different place.
Yeah, it really just doesn't make sense. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It just doesn't make sense to me, Ben, in the terms of you make the trade. You're right. Who's the staff member that goes, or who gets the order? Who gives the order to go and move this player's stuff from where it was for another player that you just traded for? And to be fair, I think they were going to try to bring him back. He started coming back to games. I think that was also within that instance of when Colin and Garland were sitting out, and they were there was a picture of them taken, and it looked like they were starting to thinking about bringing him back in. But I'm right there with you. I think the whole KPJ situation was really handled pretty poorly. So,
well, boys, he made it to a 10. I'm gonna round him out as a 10 total, because we got Justin with 4, Bennett is 2, Mike 2, so that's 8. I'm gonna give him a 2 as well, so that's 10 total. I'm gonna go quick 3 talking points because everything was already hit, which I'm glad about, because it hurts my brain to talk about it. Beeline, that's embarrassing. You gotta learn from the past. We're still paying Mike Brown from the 2010s. Like, come on, why are we signing a coach for 5-year contract for a coach in the NBA? The league that the coaching means the least? Dumb. 2, the Kyrie thing. I don't even like talking about that. I don't even like mentioning that, but it's so true. Like, oh my God, we traded Kyrie for Isaiah Thomas. Like, okay. And here's my last thing. Here's the big thing, which is my biggest red flag. I just don't think he knows the game of basketball. Like, I'm sure he does. I'm not trying to like dog the guy. Like, he knows the game of basketball, but like, where's the analytics? Like, all sports are going toward like, we have 10,000, 110,000, 100 million stats on every guy, even in college, this, that, and the other thing, analytics wise. We have big guards. We have like 3 or 4 centers. I mean, not really. We have like 2 centers and Kevin Love. And then we have guards that can't shoot threes. So the whole analytics of the NBA is play a smaller lineup. Anthony Davis is basically your center of the league. Giannis Antetokounmpo, those guys aren't centers, but those are some of the better players in the league. Have that guy be your big, and then have, obviously LeBron James helps, obviously, and then have guards that could shoot threes. Have your Steph Currys of the league. We don't have any of that. We don't have, Colin Sexton shooting pretty good from behind the arc. I don't think he's a good 3-point shooter.
We got what? Garland and Sexton, who are both 6'1". We're halfway there.
We have undersized guards. We have thank you. I almost forgot about that. We have undersized guards. We have lunky bigs. We have nobody that could shoot the 3. We don't have that good of free throw shooters. We're just drafting ass backwards, in my opinion. The analytics just getting thrown out the window. I think this season, actually, if we were like flies on the wall for this season, I think it would be really interesting, because I think that was a hit on KPJ. We kind of just like wanted a reason to fire him. We basically were like, oh, we're gonna make him freak out so we could get rid of him. And then we draft Isaac Okoro because he plays AAU 1 season with Colin Sexton. Okay, who else? Who else are you gonna draft because they played AAU together? That's embarrassing. But yeah, 2 out of 10 for me. If anyone else has any other remarks they forgot about, we'll move on. Okay, topic 3. We're gonna try to keep it shorter because me and Justin have realized through YouTube Studio that 30 to 40-minute videos do a little bit better. Anything over 40, people got long, they're busy. They don't want to watch 40-minute videos. Who does? So, should Colin Sexton have been an all-star reserve? That's the big question. We don't have to exactly answer that, but that's just the overarching question. Is Colin Sexton a legit NBA talent? That's the real question. That's the real opinionated point. Here's some stats. Here's the stat I'm going to start you guys off with because you guys will love this. I think everyone's going to love this. So this is of 2/23. So February 23rd, I was doing this research. In 2015, for the whole season, and this season's only halfway done, whatever, we could talk about it when this season's done, but I think the numbers are going to stay the same. In 2015, only 20 players out of the whole NBA averaged 20 points per game. Right now in the 2021 season, so 5-6 years later, there's 35 players averaging 20 points a game. So that's like that's like almost double. It's like 75% increase in people averaging 20 points per game. Is the NBA talent better? You could argue. I don't know. I think the NBA talent's always pretty good. Is there less defense? I think there's less defense. And is there just like more? I just think more scoring, So my point with that is just when people say, oh, he averages 20 points a game. Oh, he scored 20 in the last 15 out of the last 20 out of the last 25 games, whatever. That's not really impressive to me. Like, I feel like it's not easy to score in the NBA. Don't get me wrong, but it's never been easier. It's never been easier to average 20 points a game in the NBA. I'm going to start with Bennett.
Well, I do think, to answer your question, is Colin Sexton a legit NBA talent? The man averages 23 points a game in the NBA. He is a talented NBA player. Now the question for me is Colin Sexton a cornerstone of a franchise? Can he lead a franchise? Absolutely not. No, I don't think Colin Sexton can be better than – I think Colin Sexton would be best served as a 6-man on a contending team like LA or somewhere where he could come off the bench and provide 18 to 20 points a game playing his style of offense. I think these 23 points a game are very inflated due to the fact that we're a horrible team and literally nobody wants to shoot the ball besides Sexton. It seems like in crunch time, last 5-6 minutes of the game, nobody wants to shoot the ball. We throw it to a big around the high post, and he just immediately looks to pass it right back to Sexton and then hit a hard screen. Even a lot of, if you look at Colin Sexton and his analytics, of course, we have a GM that's very analytic centric. You look at all of Sexton's analytics.
I wish he was.
I know he looks like a good player.
That was his big pitch, though. Wasn't that Kobe Altman's big pitch? Always going to look at the numbers.
Gonna look at the
then
numbers.
He drafts a guy who shot 69% from the free throw line at Auburn.
Yep. I like with Sexton, like I looked at his stats today, on his basketball reference page, ESPN. You look at all of his stats, everything points to him being a really, really good player. But sometimes like you can't just look at analytics. You have to look at the player himself, watch a game and go, can he lead a team? Can he make others better? And Sexton really doesn't do that at all. He's not, I mean, yes, he gets assists, but they're empty assists. They don't translate to wins. We're a horrible team. We should at least be contending for the 8th seed this year with the talent that we have. Granted, injuries do play a factor to that, but we should be way better than our record is right now. And especially most of Sexton, if you watch him, his whole game is like Victor Oladipo is. He'll either come down the floor and try and blow by you and get to the basket and score, and on whether that's, a switch on a big or a smaller guard or whatever, he's getting to the basket because he's very quick. Or his only other move is coming off of the screen for a floater or a pull-up jump shot. He has absolutely no capability to go one-on-one. And I've seen a lot of people in Cleveland, on whether it be on Twitter or in the media, make the comparison. Well, the Cavs sucked when we had Kyrie the first 4 years before LeBron came back, and you could argue that they were very similar. But the difference between Kyrie and Sexton is Kyrie is an all-world talent in terms of not only scoring but ball handling. There's not been a better ball handler in the NBA's history than Kyrie Irving, and he can create his own shot and go for 50 on any given night that guy wants to, whether or not he wants to show up to the arena or he wants to stay home and light up his sage or whatever he does in his free time. Like, he seriously, like, Kyrie Irving is an all-world talent. You can't regard that. You can't dispute that. Colin Sexton is not. He has absolutely no ability to create his own shot. All of his dribble moves are very stiff. If there's one aspect he should really try to get better at, it's his ball handling, to be able to go one-on-one against somebody his size. And the other issue with Colin Sexton is that he's 6'1". Sure, you have guys like Damian Lillard in the league who are 6'1" and can be dominant and score 30, 40, 50 a night. But the difference between Damian Lillard and Colin Sexton, and it goes for Kyrie as well, is they can shoot from 5-6 feet beyond the three-point line, which makes the defense have to come out on him, which if you're, again, all you have to do, if you watch Portland, they have Nurkic, they have Cantor. What they'll do is they'll bring Dame up and they have to guard him 4 feet outside the three-point line. They'll set a screen for Dame, and now he has the option to either, if the big doesn't come up, he's got a wide open three and Dame's making that 50% of the time, or the big steps up and he has the ability to blow by him, either score at the basket or kick it to CJ in the corner or Carmelo in the corner. Sexton cannot do that. He doesn't have the ability to shoot that deep. Therefore, he's kind of limited to only being a pick and roll player.
Right. I mean, that's good analysis. Before I go over to Mike, because we're going to go to Mike, and then we're going to have Justin bring us back to maybe because we know Justin, he loves Colin Sexton. Yeah, we'll bring him back to optimism. I mean, I hope well for the guy, but I totally agree. He reminds me, Colin Sexton is like a miniature, not close in talent at all, but he reminds me of Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
He's going to have good stats. Is he stat padding? I don't know. I don't know if you could make that argument with evidence. Is he stat padding? Probably. What does that even mean? But like, has Russell Westbrook ever gotten the job done for a franchise? I mean, besides playoff appearances, clearly not. Over to Mike.
All right, I'll try and keep it short, but I don't know about the All-Star thing because honestly, I have not had enough time for myself to look at the reserves. I don't know who the reserves are, so I won't speak to that.
There were people ahead of him were better than him. That's all you need to know.
Agreed.
Well, for the talent, here's what I'll say about this. Like you said, Jeff, I think people look at points per game nowadays and just like look at that and that's it, which is totally not okay in today's NBA. Like you said, it's like easier than ever to score points. I got some here's for all our stats nerds here, Kobe Altman. I'll do some research for you. Just in our last two games, which are both wins. Okay. Colin Sexton is a net -8 in plus minus in 2 wins. Okay. He was -9 in a 1-point win against Atlanta. Okay, close game. Still bad, but anyway. And he was +1 in a 16-point win against Houston. 16. And with him on the court, we were only 1 point better than Houston.
It's not good.
All right. Well, you might say, okay, Mike, plus minus is a little leading for an individual stat when your whole team sucks. Okay. Well, I got real plus minus, different stat. If you don't know, real plus minus is players' average impact in terms of net points per 100 offensive and defensive possessions. Okay. I'll break it down for you for offense and defense. If you want to know the total net, then you just add those two together. Okay. For point guards, Colin Sexton is 45th out of 84 eligible point guards in real plus minus. He is negative 0.13 in the offensive part. So that means we score 0.13 points less per 100 possessions on offense with him on the court. And he is negative 0.62 on the defensive real plus minus. So we give up 0.62 more points on the defensive end when he's on the court. Okay, it's close to zero. I mean, it's negative, so it's not great, but it's close to zero. He's improving, seemingly. I mean, it's just not encouraging to see someone that's that much of a focal point on your team that's not having a positive impact for you. Like, I mean, it's upset. I think he's a good player. And like Bennett said, I just don't think this role is meant for him as a player. I mean, one, in terms of his charisma and his personality and like what he was marketed as when we first drafted him, he was like supposed to be this defensive superstar, and he's just bad. But like when I think about that, and when, you know, I see his personality on the court, like I'm thinking like, you know, this guy kind of reminds me of like a Pat Beverly. Like, you know, he could be a sixth man. If he scored like 15 to 18 points and wasn't responsible for scoring so much, like just a bench option, like Bennett said, sixth man, if he didn't have to focus so much energy on offense, I feel like he could improve drastically. He could become more efficient shooting. He could spend more effort and energy on defense and start locking down some people. Like, I don't think this kid is bad. I just, it's the situation he's in. It's, I don't know if he's just taking on too much for himself, but I mean, the situation around him doesn't get any better. Darius Garland, I did some research on the other guys around him. Darius Garland, 73rd out of 84 in real plus minus, negative 0.6 for offense and negative 2.54 for defense. Isaac Okoro, it's his first year. I'll give him some slack. And I don't know how he got ranked in shooting guard, but this is on ESPN. He is 116th out of 117th in shooting guards in real plus minus.
Oh my.
Negative 3.74 on offense and negative 1.93 on defense. I mean, Colin Sexton's the best out of all of them. I mean, you can tell by the numbers right there, but I mean, it's like I've said, it's the situation around him. I think he's just having to take on too much in his role, and it's just not really what suits him. I really want this guy to do well, but I think that we need to build more of a team and not have him just be like the cornerstone of our team.
It's funny you bring that up because when me and Justin did the last episode, apparently there's wins above replacement stats for NBA. I only thought it was for MLB, and we were 10-10 in the 6th or 7th seed, and his WAR was 0. So basically, we would have been 10-10 if he played any of those games or not. All right, Justin, give us the optimistic Colin Sexton is your guy pitch.
I feel like I'm really going to have to fight like an uphill battle for this one. And I'm going to have to make some really outrageous claims. But if any of you know Colin Cowherd, that's something that could be easily done. So I'm going to compare him to someone really quickly. And it's Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is one of my favorite players in current NBA rankings and everything. But Donovan Mitchell and Colin Sexton are almost identical, except for the fact about what Ben brought up about how guys like Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard, they can draw guys outside to shoot the three, and that gets them worried and everything. If Colin Sexton could develop that deep, long-range three, I feel like he is very close to a Donovan Mitchell-esque, build. He's 6'1". They're both 6'1". They're both very short guards and everything. They both have very, very similar stats. And you can argue that the Jazz have a good lineup of guys. They have good talent and everything surrounding Donovan. I think Donovan's got that kind of leader mentality, which is something I have not seen from Colin Sexton. And the one thing that I think it was either Ben or it was Mike is that, usually the guys like Kyrie and Damian Lillard, they make the players around them better. And I think that's something that, Kyrie didn't have that right away. I don't know for Damian that I could say that he didn't have that right away, but if we're, kind of trying to compare people, I think it's just going to take Colin a little bit more time for him to kind of develop that bring everyone along with him mentality. But something that I thought was really interesting was, when Jared Allen gets in, he almost makes guys like Garland better. And it's weird that, it's maybe a topic for a different time, but it's weird to see that the newest guy that we brought in is probably the guy who's going to be best for this team moving forward. And it's a hard thing to say and maybe a hard pill to swallow. But if Colin Sexton and Jared Allen could be those two guys that you build around and they continue to get better as teammates together, I honestly think you could have a really good chance with Sexton to be that cornerstone. It's just right now, it doesn't, to the original question, is he an all-star? No, the guys in front of him on this list are better all-stars than him. But I don't think that, Jaylen Brown was an all-star in his first 2 years, and Jason Tatum, great guy. Zach LaVine, if you want to talk about a guy who took a while to come along, Zach LaVine's the perfect, talking point. But, it's kind of like a time thing. If you don't hit in the draft, like if you don't get your Zions, and even look at those guys, I mean, they're not leading their teams to the playoffs. They're not leading their teams to, winning playoff games. So it's really a time thing. It's really hard to kind of throw the brick at the wall right now and be like, Colin Sexton's a bust because, he's doing better than Anthony Bennett. Let's be thankful for stuff like that. But
that's not saying much.
It's
not saying, yeah.
It's not, but you gotta be hopeful for some of those things. I think Colin, he's improved. I think he's shown improvement. And hopefully, maybe a year or two from now on, even guys like Giannis, he wasn't MVP caliber when he came into the league. He wasn't MVP worthy for like the first 3 years. It's just kind of like a time thing. If you don't get the LeBrons, you don't get the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry's, it's kind of hard to be like right away, what do you feel about this guy? So that's my take on it.
We've been kind of spoiled in Cleveland the past couple of years too. Lindor coming up with the Indians, obviously sore subject now, but Lindor coming up with the Indians. We draft Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward with the Browns. Like we had LeBron on the Cavs. Okay.
Had to throw it in there.
The Browns are good
for another time, but
it is early. It's early for Colin Sexton. He's still young. I mean, it's easy to hate. It's very easy to be a hater. It's tough looking, optimistic on stuff. But I agree with just him not being able to be the cornerstone. That's basically it. We're gonna go yes.
Instant gratification with letting them develop.
Right. 100% true. All right, we're going to go yes or no answers. We're going to go Bennett to Mike to Justin. Are the Cavs a lottery team this year once again? Go.
Yes.
Okay. Well, at least we all agree.
We all agree on one thing.
It's that we suck.
All right. So we're getting a little long on time. We're going to any other comments? Any other bangers out there that we missed?
I really want these guys to do well. I know I was hating on them a bit this episode, but I'm still a fan. I want to see them win. That's why I'm tough on them. Tough love.
Yep.
Don't make the mistake we made with Kevin Love. Trade Colin Sexton while his trade value is high.
Oh no.
We gotta end. We gotta bring him back for another one now.
Gotta get that
was Bennett's move for another one.
Yep. Just wait. Yep. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Well, boys, Mike, Bennett, we really appreciate you guys coming on. This won't be the last. We're gonna ask you again. We're gonna bother you again to come on. I'm sure it was a good time. Justin, thanks for letting me put this one together, boss.
Absolutely.
We'll be back. We'll be back next week, maybe with more collaborations. So stay on lookout for that. This has been the Cleveland Pulse podcast. Peace.